there is a feature called eval, which would evaluate the string that was given as if it's a command, and it will be passed on to the shell to execute. One warning: never evaluate a user supplied string on any shell, because such features, if they are available in any script, will make the system vulnerable to attacks, because the user can supply any arbitrary command, and if it gets executed, and sometimes dangerously by a super user permission, then anything can happen. So it's a very good security practice to not evaluate any user supplied string as it is. With that warning, you can go ahead and see whether you can construct commands and then evaluate them on the shell. So sometimes there are some commands which you would like to construct using various string operations, etc. And finally you have got a set of strings. Then all those strings can be treated as a single string and then getting executed on the shell using the eval command. And once it is over, the control will be given back to the shell which has launched the eval command. So here is a very simple example where we are taking two strings, cmd and fmt, and then I am just passing it on to eval and see what happens. And you see that the data has been printed. So it is as good as sending those two strings side by side to bash and then getting the output. So eval actually sending those strings to the shell and then printing them out. So the variation we have done is that we are printing the process ID of the script and also what is executing the eval command for the date output. And before I proceed, let me see the process ID of the current shell. It is 2360, and then I have the eval example. So you see that the eval example showing me that the command has been executed by the shell that was launched separately to run the script, and so which means that this was run in the same shell as the eval example.sh script. Sometimes it is useful to have functions written in your script so that certain specific actions are taken care by respective functions, and you can reuse those functions by keeping them in a particular script file and then sourcing it in every script that you would write, so that standard functions are available in multiple scripts. And these can be things like writing an error message or logging information to a logbook, providing help documentation about the script, etc. So here is an example of a script which has some functions. So what we have is two functions. One function usage. The function usage, what it does is it will take the argument that was passed to it and tell that the script has to be used in a particular format, that is the name by which it has been launched. Here you can see that I am calling it with the $0, which means what is the name by which the script has been called, and then it should be called with two strings one after other. So I am telling a help information on the screen how the script has to be launched. Now there's another function which is swapping. So it is printing the two variables that are passed in a reverse order. Now you can see that $1 and $2 do not correspond to the arguments to the shell, but arguments to the call of the swap function. The same thing is applicable here. $1 is the argument passed to the usage call. Okay, so here if you see, in case the script has been called with less than 2 arguments, then I am printing the usage document and I am exiting. And in case it has been called with 2 arguments or more, then I am swapping the first and second arguments. So you can see here the name of the script has been passed to usage, and there is a first argument being sent to usage, and therefore $1 corresponds to the $0, which is basically the name of the script that has been used for launching. So let us try this out. So I try without any arguments. So you can see that the usage has been displayed, and you can see that the $1 here is $0, which is basically name of the script, and it's quite nice because I don't have to hard code that inside. Okay, and str1 str2 is what is here, saying that you have to use this particular script with 2 strings as arguments. So let me also have arg1 and you see that the same output is coming because it is having only one argument and not two as expected. And if I give two arguments, then it would actually go ahead and do the swapping, and you are seeing that the output is having the reversed sequence of the arguments that you have supplied. So here is an example where some of the actions are packaged away in functions, and these can also be kept in a separate file to source. So let us see that also now. So what I would do is a function example. I would say mylib.sh, and I go to mylib.sh, and I will have these functions that are kept in the library. So I have pushed the functions into a file which contains these for sourcing. So it's like my library file, and now I can make my script a little bit brief by saying I want to source mylib.sh, and therefore I don't need the function definitions here. So now they are available, and so the function calls are all hidden away in a library file, and now I'm just directly using the calls for usage and swapping, and the script is now very brief, which is quite elegant. So let us go ahead and try this out. And so it works exactly what we have intended. Okay, so you can see that this is a very nice way by which you can take away some of the program codes and keep them as functions, and store them in a library file and source it in your script so that they are not seen in the main script file, to keep your code elegant, and also to perhaps not touch the functions that are well written, and therefore they don't have to be disturbed when you are editing. Now, as you have seen that we can pass arguments to shell scripts, and it's a good idea to have some of the arguments designed in the way that Linux commands are also working. So you can pass on some options and then have a way by which those options are processed in an automatical fashion. Now, getopts is a feature available within the bash, so that this processing of options passed to the script is done in a very elegant manner. So for example, in this script, you can call the script using the options A, B or C, that is -A, -B and -C. And if you are giving options like -B or -C, then they should have a value after that. So -B, then B argument, -C, then C argument. However, -A will not require any argument. So the colon following the letter shows that that particular option will have a value that is being expected. So some kind of a argument is being expected for those options. This is actually processed very elegantly here, saying that with a case loop. So if the options are such that the B is the option, then the argument that is supplied with the B is then put in the variable called barg, and it's the C option, then the argument that is supplied is put in the carg, and if it is A, then you don't have to do any of those, and by default you can actually tell the usage pattern of that particular script and then close the case loop and close the do loop. So this is a very neat way by which the options are being processed, and you don't have to now worry about which position the A, B, C options have come, because the case loop will take care of those kind of actions. So let us see this usage in a script, so that you can try this out for any professionally written script that you would like to do shortly. So here is a very simple script that we have just now seen. So we are actually going to launch it by giving the options. So let us give the options as -A, -B, then B argument, -C, C argument. Okay, and let us say -D, -C. I am giving some extra options. Now what will happen is that the case loop has worked, and it is accepting -A, -B argument, -C argument, but it is also telling something more, which is very useful. That is, it says that you have given an illegal option, because the options that were actually accepted are A, B, C as given in the getopts. So any other option is then illegal. So it is also helping you to reduce the amount of coding, because you don't now need to search for any other pattern and then throw some error. So these errors are thrown by getopts, which is very elegant. Okay, now let us skip those, and let us say the C option is given without any argument. So you see that again there is a requirement of an argument for the C option and it is being alerted. So which means that again here the colon that is after the C is doing the entire magic of searching for an argument after the C option, and if it is not there then it is actually throwing an error. Okay. Similarly, I can actually say C argument, but I skip the B argument. And you see what happens? What happens is that minus C is used as if it is the argument for minus B. After that, rest of it is ignored, and therefore there are two options that are actually active, minus A and minus B. So minus C is actually used as if it is the argument for B. Now I would actually also be able to try that out for an error by skipping it. So you can see that there is nothing after B, and therefore what is expected as an argument for the B option is missing, and therefore there is an error. Okay, I could now also see that for C, so the same error will be shown. Okay, now if I don't give any of those, there is no problem because there are only options and therefore there is no error. So you can see that the option processing and expecting an argument and throwing errors if they are not available as per requirement is all done quite elegantly by using the getopts. By going through the getopts documentation and implementing that in your scripts, you can actually make your script quite professional, almost like any other Linux command. Now one last thing that we would like to look at in the bash features is to provide a menu. So let us say we have a set of things that user has to pick up, and a menu is to be shown, and the user has to pick one of those that are shown in the menu. So this entire idea of showing a set of options as a menu and then checking for the user input, seeing if the user input is one of the menu items that are listed. If it's not, then throwing an error, and if it is matching, then assigning that particular value of the chosen menu to a variable and then moving on. So the entire action can be captured by using a select loop. Here is an example of a select loop, and let us go and explore this by actually running it. And this is a beautiful way by which a text menu can be provided within the terminal environment. This is quite elegant because the construction of select loop is quite simple like any other case loop. However, there is a additional action that is being performed, namely whatever you choose is being matched with what is in the menu, and then unless it matches, the loop is just continuing so that the user input is sought for only one of the listed menu items and not anything else. So let us check that out, how it works. So the select example that we have chosen is same as what is in the slides, and we will run it now. And you see that I have shown 10 numbers, and I am asking a number that is falling in the middle of the range. So if I choose 1, it says that I have picked a small number. If I choose 9, it says I have picked up a big number. If I choose 5, then it says that I have picked the right one, and then the variable that is actually running with that select loop is given a value 5, and then we are printing it out. So you can see the script here, select completed with $i. So I is a variable for the select loop, and I has been assigned a value 5, as you can see here. Okay, the final selection that is accepted is used to assign the value of the variable which is used for the select loop, and then we move on to the remaining part of the code. Now let us try the same thing with options that actually not listed. So what happens when I give options? Like for example, I just give some random string. So you see that it doesn't leave me. Okay, I can't actually leave, and I have to give options that are only part of the menu, and I can give that. Okay, and you see that it allows to finish only when I come out of the loop as per the script. And what is that? You can see here I am able to come out of the loop using break only when I choose either 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. Otherwise I am not coming out of the loop, and that's what happened here. I picked 1 and 2 and 3, the loop is still continuing. The moment I picked 4, I am able to come out of the loop. So that's what has happened here. Okay, so you can use the break command to indicate what is the value or the pattern that you are looking for within the menu. Otherwise you can ask the user to keep iterating, and you can also be sure that if the user gives any input other than what is actually listed in these menu items, then it will be ignored. Okay, so that way it is very elegant. So you have now seen most of the features that are required to create a professional bash script. Please make sure that you follow some security features. Do not give set UID permission to the scripts unless you know what you're doing. And do not process user inputs to run commands because they could contain some malicious code. Check for validity of the user input before you use in your scripts so that the script would run without any error. And soon you can see that by packaging some of these actions as library calls that are kept in a separate file, you can make a very professional looking bash script all by yourself and create new commands for your own processing of textual information on the Linux operating system. So enjoy exploring by actually trying them out.